The stage lights flickered to life inside America's most watched political talk show, The Political Truth Hour. It wasn't just another debate night. It was the night the entire country would be talking about. The camera zoomed in. Two men sat across from each other, both legends in their own right. On the right, Donald Trump, the former president, adjusted his red tie, wearing that familiar look, part confidence, part defiance. On the left, Denzel Washington, calm but sharp-eyed, radiating the kind of focus only years of experience and truth can give. The host leaned toward the mic. "Gentlemen, tonight we discuss the truth about America, leadership, and accountability." Denzel didn't blink. His expression said it all. He came here for answers. Trump smirked, leaning back, ready to turn this into a show. The audience could already feel it. The tension was electric. This wasn't politics anymore. It was a battle for the soul of the nation, playing out live on TV. The tension broke the moment Denzel leaned forward. His voice wasn't raised, it didn't need to be. It carried the weight of truth. "You're not a leader, Donald," he said, eyes locked on Trump. "You're a demagogue. A manipulator. And a criminal who hides behind the flag." The studio froze. For a second, even the air seemed to stop moving. Trump's face tightened, his signature orange tone now flashing red. He pointed a finger toward Denzel. "You don't know what you're talking about. You Hollywood types." But Denzel cut him off, calm but razor-sharp. "I know enough to see through the lies. You sold the people a dream, and you delivered a nightmare." The audience gasped, half in shock, half in awe. It wasn't just a verbal punch. It was a knockout. Trump tried to laugh it off, shaking his head, but his hands trembled slightly on the desk. The camera zoomed in, every viewer at home could see it. A once untouchable figure, now cracking under the pressure of the truth. That's when it hit everyone watching. This wasn't a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. By sunrise, the world was already on fire. Clips from the confrontation flooded every major platform: Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, even late-night TV. The moment Denzel said the words, "You sold the people a dream and delivered a nightmare," had become the soundbite of the decade. In living rooms across America, people replayed it again and again, some cheering, some fuming, all unable to look away. Morning shows replayed the footage in slow motion, panelists dissecting every raised eyebrow and every breath Trump took after that line. The split screen of Denzel's calm stare and Trump's flustered glare became an instant meme. Hashtags exploded, hashtag Denzel versus Trump, hashtag Truth on Air, hashtag Demagogue down. Inside the White House, advisors scrambled to manage the narrative. Trump's team pushed statements calling Denzel a washed-up actor desperate for attention. But that only fueled the fire. Denzel didn't need to respond, his silence became louder than any speech. Across the nation, something shifted. For the first time in years, people weren't just entertained, they were thinking. They started questioning not only the man on the screen, but the entire system behind him. The confrontation had torn a hole in the illusion, and the light of truth was flooding in. And deep down, everyone knew, this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger. The following night, Donald Trump stormed into Fox News headquarters, demanding airtime. His face, flushed with fury, looked like a man cornered by his own reflection. Every major network knew what was coming, a desperate counterattack. He took the stage with the same bravado he once used to charm millions, but this time, it felt rehearsed. His voice boomed. "Denzel Washington is just another Hollywood elitist trying to lecture real Americans. He doesn't understand sacrifice. He doesn't know what it means to fight for this country." The crowd cheered, but the energy felt artificial, a hollow echo of his former rallies. Viewers at home weren't buying it. Within minutes, social media exploded again, only this time, the clips were merciless. Side-by-sides of Denzel's calm truth against Trump's angry tirade flooded timelines. Memes labeled Trump the shaken showman. Political analysts dissected every word. One commentator said bluntly, "Trump's response isn't leadership, it's panic." By midnight, the damage was done. Poll trackers showed a sharp dip in public favor toward Trump. Denzel hadn't even spoken again, but he didn't need to. His words from the night before still echoed louder than Trump's shouts. Somewhere in Los Angeles, Denzel sat quietly, watching the replay. He didn't smile, not out of pride, but because he knew what this moment meant. Truth had finally hit power in the face, and the world was watching the cracks form. By the third day, the entire country had turned into an arena. Cafes, offices, universities, and even church steps buzzed with one question: was Denzel right? It wasn't just about politics anymore, it was about truth, power, and what America had become. On one side stood millions who felt seen for the first time. They replayed Denzel's speech like a national anthem for the voiceless, the veterans, the working class, the students drowning in debt, the mothers juggling 2 jobs. They saw in him not just an actor, but a man who dared to say what others only whispered. Hashtags like #TruthByDenzel and #RealCourage trended non-stop. Murals of his face appeared overnight on walls from Detroit to Oakland, painted beneath the words, "The voice we needed." But the other side, Trump's unwavering base, grew louder, angrier, more defiant. They filled rallies with chants of "Hollywood lies" and "Stay in your lane, Denzel." Talk shows ran split-screen debates, pundits shouting over each other about race, privilege, and patriotism. What started as a confrontation had evolved into a cultural war. Meanwhile, Denzel avoided interviews. He didn't tweet. He didn't clarify. He simply let the chaos swirl. Because he knew, in silence, his words grew stronger. Each hour of quiet turned his statement into something larger than any headline. By the end of the week, the country was split in two, not by geography, but by belief. Half saw Trump's rage as weakness. Half saw Denzel's defiance as rebellion. And between them, America trembled, a nation no longer sure what it stood for. 7 days had passed. For a full week, Denzel Washington hadn't spoken a single word since the confrontation that split America in two. News anchors speculated, political commentators begged for an interview, and millions waited, refreshing social media feeds, wondering if he'd say something, anything. But Denzel stayed silent. Until that Sunday night. Without warning, his team uploaded a live broadcast link titled "Only for the People." No networks. No sponsors. No studio backdrop. Just Denzel, sitting in a simple wooden chair, framed by the faint hum of city noise behind him. His expression was calm, yet his eyes burned with the weight of 1,000 unspoken truths. He began slowly, his voice steady and deliberate. "I've been quiet because sometimes noise isn't power, truth is. I didn't call out a man. I called out a system that rewards greed, division, and corruption." Millions tuned in within minutes. He spoke about working-class families forgotten by policy, about justice systems that served wealth instead of fairness, and about leaders, both left and right, who built empires on people's pain. He didn't raise his voice once. He didn't need to. Every pause, every breath, carried more weight than any campaign speech. "America isn't falling apart because of one man," he said, leaning forward. "It's falling apart because too many of us stopped caring who's telling the truth." Comments flooded in, thousands per second. Even those who disagreed couldn't look away. It wasn't a celebrity speech. It wasn't politics. It was a reckoning. When he finished, there was no outro, no applause, just silence. The live stream cut to black. And for the first time in years, America wasn't shouting. It was listening. By the next morning, chaos erupted in Washington. Trump's team scrambled to regain control. His advisors drafted emergency talking points, desperate to rewrite the narrative Denzel had ignited. Cable news hosts shouted over each other, headlines screamed, "Hollywood declares war on Trump." Yet beneath all the noise, something had shifted, a quiet realization that Trump's grip on his own supporters was slipping. At 8 p.m., Trump took to the stage in Florida, his signature red tie loose, his tone unsteady. Cameras zoomed in on his hands, they were trembling slightly. The former president began with his usual defiance. "I built this country stronger than anyone. And now this actor thinks he can judge me?" The crowd cheered, but the enthusiasm was thinner than usual. Trump's words were sharp, but lacked conviction. He attacked Denzel's career, mocked his Hollywood morality, even questioned his intelligence, but the insults landed flat. For the first time, it wasn't Denzel who looked angry. It was Trump who looked afraid. Social media reacted instantly. Split-screen edits showed Trump shouting while Denzel's calm face from his broadcast played beside him. The contrast was devastating. Within hours, polls showed Trump's approval among independents dropping by double digits. That night, major donors began calling their Republican contacts, whispering fears that the Denzel incident might mark the beginning of Trump's political downfall. Even Fox analysts hesitated, one of them admitting live on air, "This might be the first time Trump's bluster has met its match." In Los Angeles, Denzel didn't celebrate. He watched the broadcast in silence, eyes fixed on the screen. For all the noise, he saw one truth crystal clear: this wasn't about winning an argument. It was about changing the conversation forever. The morning after Trump's failed rally, something extraordinary began to happen across the country. It started small, a few hundred people gathering in Times Square, holding handwritten signs that read, "Truth over power," and "We stand with Denzel." By sunset, the movement had spread to every major city in America. From Los Angeles to Atlanta, from Chicago to Dallas, thousands flooded the streets. It wasn't chaos this time, it was clarity. People of every age, race, and background stood shoulder to shoulder, chanting for transparency, accountability, and unity. Teachers marched next to veterans, nurses next to filmmakers, and factory workers next to students. It wasn't about celebrity anymore. Denzel had become the symbol of something bigger, something raw and deeply American. News outlets tried to downplay it, calling it a Hollywood stunt. But the numbers told a different story. Over 20 million people had watched Denzel's broadcast in less than 48 hours. Hashtags like #StandForTruth and #NoMoreLies trended globally. Inside the White House, panic rippled through the corridors. Trump's advisors fought behind closed doors, unsure whether to attack harder or pull back entirely. Every time they mentioned Denzel, the backlash grew worse. Donors pulled funding. Lawmakers hesitated to defend him on camera. For the first time, Trump's empire looked fragile, not because of politics, but because the truth had found a louder voice. That night, Denzel appeared briefly on camera again. No grand speech, just a single message. "This isn't my fight anymore. It's yours." Those words exploded like thunder. The next morning, marches doubled. Workers refused to clock in. Students staged walkouts. America, once numb and divided, was suddenly alive, driven by something no politician could control. It wasn't a rebellion. It was an awakening. By the third week, Washington no longer resembled the city of power it once was. The marble halls of Congress echoed with whispers, senators avoiding cameras, aides rushing through corridors with faces pale from sleepless nights. Every major network was running one headline: "The Denzel Effect, a Nation in Reckoning." Behind the scenes, Trump's campaign was unraveling. Major donors withdrew support, leaving his political machine starved of funds. Lawyers resigned. Allies turned silent. For years, Trump had thrived on chaos, but this time, the chaos wasn't his to control. It was bigger. It was moral. Leaks began flooding the press. Secret recordings, shady financial ties, emails that contradicted years of denials, all surfacing one by one. It was as if the truth itself had declared war. Cable news tried to frame it as coincidence, but Americans weren't buying it anymore. The same people who once cheered at Trump's rallies were now questioning everything. Meanwhile, Denzel stayed silent again. His team refused interviews. No rallies, no slogans, only calm. That silence spoke louder than every press conference in Washington. Then came the breaking point. A whistleblower from within Trump's inner circle went public on live television. Trembling, he revealed details of illegal deals, manipulation of funds, and deliberate misinformation campaigns. As he spoke, Trump's team tried to cut the broadcast, but it was too late. Within minutes, every major platform streamed it worldwide. The White House descended into panic. Phones rang non-stop. Advisors argued. Trump, pacing the Oval Office, shouted orders no one followed. The man who had built his empire on intimidation now found himself ignored, isolated, irrelevant. Outside, in cities across America, people gathered once more, not to celebrate, but to witness. Because everyone knew this was more than the fall of one man. It was the collapse of a system built on lies finally giving way to truth. Dawn broke over Washington, painting the city in pale gold. But this morning felt different. Quieter, heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. The streets once filled with anger and protest were now calm, lined with people standing shoulder to shoulder, watching the sunrise in silence. Across the country, something irreversible had happened. America had looked at itself, truly looked, and didn't like what it saw. Trump's empire was gone. The investigations had stripped away the image he'd built for decades. Bankruptcies, hidden deals, corruption, every secret now lay bare. For the first time, even his most loyal followers turned away, whispering words they'd once sworn they'd never say. Maybe he was wrong. The media, too, changed tone. Instead of shouting and spinning narratives, anchors paused. They replayed Denzel's old broadcast, the moment he'd said, "Power doesn't define integrity." It became a kind of national echo, a reminder of what leadership should mean. Schools began quoting it. College students printed it on banners. It was no longer just Denzel's line, it was America's. And Denzel? He vanished from the spotlight. Reporters camped outside his home, networks begged for interviews, but he refused them all. Instead, he spent his days visiting community centers, talking to kids, shaking hands with teachers, listening to veterans. The cameras that found him caught a quiet man, no longer the symbol of outrage, but of renewal. Weeks later, he gave one final speech, simple and raw. If one voice can start a fire, imagine what happens when millions speak with truth. The crowd erupted, not with noise, but with unity. No chants, no slogans, just applause that rolled like thunder across the city. As dusk fell, the camera panned over the Capitol. The flag waved against the darkening sky, and for the first time in years, it meant something again. Not power. Not politics. But promise. When the noise fades and the headlines vanish, what remains is truth. Denzel Washington didn't just confront a man. He challenged a mindset, a culture built on fear and lies. In the ashes of arrogance, America found a heartbeat again, one that beats for justice, honesty, and courage. This wasn't about fame or politics. It was about a nation remembering who it was meant to be. So ask yourself, when the lights go out, and the crowds are gone, will you stand for power? Or for truth? This is not the end, this is the awakening.